On the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, Michael Kaskey-Blomain. Follow him on Twitter at @TheRealMikeKB for all your Sixers and NBA coverage. And check out his work as well at 97.3 ESPN.com. Mike, how you doing on this Saturday?
I'm doing pretty good, Josh. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. So I want to get your perspective on the Sixers team because I think there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of different opinions. And, you know, frankly, for me, where I start with everything, though, Mike, is the fact that for me, I just don't see a Sixers team that is executing. I don't think it's as simple as Embiid or Butler are not in the lineup. I think that sometimes in sports, guys have to step up. And, you know, when Embiid missed all those games last year, people stepped up. I feel like outside of the Timberwolves game, guys are just not stepping up when they're needed to. And I know some people say, well, we're seeing too much of Zaire Smith and Shake Milton. But to me, whoever's on the floor, look, you're a professional basketball player. You got to go out there and do your job. And I feel like for this basketball team right now, they're just not executing.
I think that's a fair point, Josh. I think there's definitely circumstances where you would like to see a little bit more from, you know, for instance, Ben Simmons in that recent Milwaukee game. Tobias Harris has been, you know, a little bit quiet with Joel out. Obviously, Jimmy, you know, he has his moments where sometimes it seems very aggressive, other times not. But I do agree that I think that there's, you know, I'm not overly concerned. I'm not one of these people now that, you know, all of a sudden thinks they're going to lose in the first round. But I do think that, you know, the way they've been executing recently, regardless of who's in the lineup, is, you know, a little bit concerning considering how close they are to the postseason. And it's not, you know, I don't think that it's necessarily imperative that they win 17 straight games heading into the postseason like they did last year. But I think in general, it's usually, you know, a good idea to be playing some of your, you know, at least some of your sharpest basketball, your most well-tuned basketball at this point in the season. And, you know, it's for a variety of reasons, injuries, roster turnover, and, you know, simply execution. Like you said, the Sixers haven't been doing that for the past, you know, maybe 2 weeks. And I think that is, you know, like I said, I'm not overly concerned, but I do think that's a cause for some concern.
You know, you've been around this team. You've seen them all year long. How much do you think of this is psychological for them versus actually, like, you know, like physical? Because, you know, look, we saw Embiid fall on his tailbone on Thursday night. And, you know, when he hit the ground like that, I thought I didn't know if he was going to play the rest of the game, but he did. You know, but then other days, like, oh, it's load management, tendonitis, all this other stuff. How much of this is really mental over physical, do you think?
That's a good point, Josh. I definitely think some part of it is mental. You know, at this point in the season, obviously, I think the team kind of, not that they should have done this, you know, given their track history, but it seems like once the 3 seed was pretty much locked up and, you know, home court advantage in the first round at least was pretty well sewn up, it does seem like they almost kind of, you know, took their foot off the gas a little bit, have been coasting. And, you know, for a team like the Warriors that's, you know, accomplished 3, you know, gone 4 straight championships, won 3 titles, that's one thing. But for the Sixers team, especially considering the lack of, you know, playing time that the starters have had together and the lack of really times they've had together as a team, I think it's a little bit, you know, interesting that that's the case. And I do think that that's mental. You know, from being around the team, it doesn't seem like the negativity, I guess, that's been on, you know, social media and stuff regarding this team over the past couple weeks has really infiltrated the locker room. You know, Joel, Ben, Tobias, they all still seem extremely you know, optimistic about the team, about the chemistry and the makeup of the team, and about their chances heading into the postseason. You know, Brett Brown himself has consistently just preached health and consistency, which I think is, you know, a bit of a crutch, but I do think it's also something that you really need to be taken into account when you have a team that's as thin as the Sixers are, and they have had guys in and out of the lineup. And like you said, Josh, we've been seeing a lot of guys like Shake Milton, Zaire Smith, who've been, you know, doing decent, but we haven't seen them all year. They're rookies, you know, they're having their obvious, you know, enter the NBA struggles. And I think when you're, you know, a playoff team that's playing 2 or 3 guys that, you know, aren't going to sniff the playoff rotation at this time in the season, that definitely adds to it. But I think, you know, some of it's definitely mental, but at least from what I've seen, the mentality of the team is still optimistic, and they still think that they can, you know, do some serious damage in this postseason.
Yeah, because I think, Mike, and I don't know if you agree or disagree with this, and you could let me know, but I see the talent. There's talent there. These guys are very capable players. And I think that many times that for athletes, it comes down to them. It's them at the foul line. It's them shooting the three ball. It's them mano-a-mano as a defender. Guys sometimes I think spend too much time looking around them when the season comes, because it's a long season. And I think that I'm glad to hear that they're not negative in the locker room, but at the same time, maybe there needs to be a little negativity, Mike. Maybe there needs to be a little bit of a guy, whoever it is, whether it's a veteran or somebody else, stepping up in the locker room and be like, hey, guys, let's get our heads out of the sand because we're playing pretty lousy.
Yeah, that's a good point, Josh. And I think there is a bit of that. I mean, I definitely think there's accountability. I'm not saying that, I don't think there's accountability in the locker room. I just think that the overriding kind of attitude of this team is that they still feel that they have the talent to compete. Now, obviously, talent can only take you so far. You have to have the chemistry, to complement that talent. But with, the time that they've really had together to work, the starting five has played, I think now it's 11 or 12 games together since the Tobias trade. It's still such a small sample size that I do think that they're banking on the fact that, when the playoffs are here and they're all healthy and that talent is all on the same page with the system that they're, somewhat familiar with at this point, that things are going to click. But, I do think that there's, accountability that needs to go around. And I think they have those guys. Brett has never been a guy to let his players off the hook. Jimmy Butler obviously is a guy that the Sixers brought here for kind of that edge and that veteran leadership type of mentality. I think he certainly provides that. And I think Joel is gaining that too at this point in his career. He's he obviously has the hunger and the desire to be great. And I think that losing, obviously, every time the Sixers lose, Joel's demeanor is, starkly different from what it is after they win. He's, you can tell that he's truly bothered by it. So I do think that he's developing that sort of leadership, accountability in his third season. That's important too. But I do think, I don't want to minimize these games that they're playing right now, but I think there's an understanding within the locker room and just around the league in general that these games, they're not throwaway games, but the team is clearly prioritizing rest, and making sure that they're fully healthy for the postseason, obviously, by sitting Joel those games. Jimmy out against the Bucks, questionable again tonight. It's clear that they're prioritizing getting all these guys healthy as opposed to, ringing off a couple of wins at the end of the season against teams that they, quite frankly, should be beating. But, I think at this point they're just ready to turn that page into the postseason and kind of just roll the dice with, their starting five, Mike Scott and TJ, and see how far that unit can really take them.
They only got 3 games left, Mike. And right now they're basically a half a game ahead of the Celtics. If they don't win 2 of the final 3, I mean, realistically they should win all 3, but if they don't win 2 out of the final 3, they could risk falling to the 4 seed and losing, a little bit of an edge. Does that concern you at all?
Yeah, it does, Josh. And I've actually seen some people suggest that falling to the 4 seed might be a better, situation for the Sixers. If you fall to the 4 seed, projectedly they'd be playing the Pacers in the first round and then the Bucks in the second round. If they stay in the 3 spot, it looks like they'd be probably playing the Pistons and then the Raptors, which, might be a tougher matchup. But I'm not of that mindset. I don't think that a team should look to, worry about the matchup. I think you have to approach it with the attitude of, we want to finish as high as possible. If you're going to get out of the East, you're going to have to play these teams anyway. So I don't think that's the way they're looking at it. And I do think it would be a little bit of, I guess, like you said, Josh, a loss of an edge if they were to drop down to the 4 seed after really kind of getting that momentum to get this, climb up to the 3 seed. They were in the 5 seed for a while earlier this calendar year, climbed up to the 3 seed. Looked like they had it, pretty well wrapped up until this recent skid, I guess, over the past couple of weeks. So I do think it would be a bit demoralizing to drop into that 4 seed, even if, technically the path might be a little bit easier potentially in the playoffs at that point.
Yeah, because also, to me, if there's a way you can play the Pistons in the first round, to me, Mike, that's ideal because that's a team you can beat, and B is going to be motivated to dominate Drummond for 4 or 5 games, and I think that you want to get a little confidence out of that first round. If I'm the Sixers, I don't want to see the Nets. I don't want to see the Magic because those are 2 teams that I think that can be a thorn in the side for 5, 6, even 7 games, and you don't want to be worn out going into the second round. I think if they played a team like the Pistons, that's a team that you could turn around and say, hey, we can dispatch this team and let's go get a little bit of rest.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Josh. I do think the Pistons are probably the best matchup. Although, if this team is going to make the noise that they want to make, whoever they play in the first round really shouldn't be an issue. But I do agree, obviously based on their track record, the Nets could be a handful. Orlando's been playing some good ball. So in the first round, Detroit probably would be the best matchup. I think, projecting forward, it's that second round that would really be, it comes to would you rather play the Raptors or the Bucks? And my approach is that, ultimately you're going to have to get through these teams. They've fared a little bit better against the Bucks, but at the end of the day, you have to play the best. So to me, I would like to see them hold on to that 3 seed, face the Pistons, and then, give the best shot to the teams in the next 2 rounds.
No matter what happens in the playoffs, what is going to be your evaluation on the year of Elton Brand? Because this is a guy who made 2 major trades this year. He really you could argue, started the job a little late because he wasn't in the GM seat all summer. That was Brett Brown overseeing the basketball operations on an interim basis. And now, after this year, he goes into his first offseason. So, with the limited sample size, what is really the evaluation of Elton Brand? I mean, I like the fact that he's been active. I like the fact that this is a guy who has not been sitting on his hands. But I think some people, if they don't have the success people expect, they may question Elton's moves.
Josh, I think so far Elton's done a really good job, and I think what you said is really key, the fact that he kind of came in late. So much of a GM's job is done over the offseason, really, structuring a roster, especially for a team like the Sixers that was coming off a 52-win season, got to the second round and had a couple superstars in place over the offseason in Ben Simmons and Joel last summer. So much of a GM job at that point is to, surround those guys with talent to take them to the next level. And Elton didn't really get a chance to do that over the offseason. And I thought he did a really good job of kind of making up for that by, not only 1, but 2 blockbuster trades for, guys that are, all-star caliber players. I think that this offseason coming up obviously will make it easier to judge Elton because we'll get to see him have a full summer to, kind of build out a roster rather than kind of having to do these drastic mid-season trades. But I think he set the team up well. Obviously, some of the assets had to be used, but you have, 2 guys now that are coming toward free agency. And if you're not able to retain both, it's set up so you would think that they'd be able to at least retain one of Jimmy or Tobias. That kind of, it's a safety net, I guess you can say, in case they weren't able to land someone straight out in free agency before the trade. So I think that was really a smart move to kind of get the third star, on the roster without having to worry about competing in free agency because there's a very limited market for these top tier players. All these teams want them, and there's a lot of different factors that go into it. And Philly's attractive, but it's not, the top tier market right now where free agents are signing. So I think that by, swinging for the fences in the Elton and Jimmy trade, he really set the Sixers up solidly for the future going forward. Now it's just a matter of, how he is able to construct the rest of the roster going forward. But so far, my evaluation of Elton has been positive, especially coming off the heels of, a tenure of Brian Colangelo, where it just seems like he really didn't do much in the way of improving the team in any meaningful way. And then you have Elton, who kind of came in and wasted no time in making, 2 huge trades. So that was kind of, at least to me, sort of a breath of fresh air after what was kind of a stagnant tenure for Colangelo.
Before I let you go, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up the announcement of the Basketball Hall of Fame. I believe it's now 3 straight years we've had former Sixers go into the Basketball Hall of Fame. This year, the announcement was Bobby Jones, the first ever Sixth Man of the Year. Last year was Mo Cheeks, and then before that it was Iverson. I think a lot of times people forget about the rich history of basketball in Philadelphia and the success that happened because, the process is so fresh in people's minds. People forget that there is a basketball history in Philadelphia. And you're talking about now a franchise in the Sixers that is getting close to the other franchises like the Celtics and the Lakers in terms of number of people in the Hall of Fame. And I don't think that should be overlooked.
No, definitely, Josh. I agree with you. I mean, when you're talking about the Sixers, you're talking about, one of the premier franchises in the NBA. Obviously, it's a little bit shorter to those teams you were talking to in terms of success, 3 championships doesn't measure up to the double-digit titles of, the Lakers and the Celtics. But the Sixers are a team that has been around and had success for a long time. And more importantly, like you said, Josh, has had some of the greatest players in the history of basketball come through that organization, all the way back from Wilt through, Bobby Jones, the Moses, Dr. J, Charles in the 80s up through Iverson and the today's players. It's a constant stream of, some of the best players in basketball history. And, not a lot of organizations can say that. Obviously, I think the Sixers fan base has been pretty lucky, and hopefully we can continue to, add guys to the Hall of Fame. Hopefully we have a couple guys on the roster right now that'll be there one day.
Follow him on Twitter at @TheRealMikeKB for all your Sixers and NBA coverage. Again, @TheRealMikeKB on Twitter, R973 ESPN.com, Sixers Insider. Mike, I appreciate your time on a Saturday. Hope you get to enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, Josh. You too, man. Have a great one.